In what's been the theme of the season, the Hornets suffer another injury to, of course, a very key player. At least we have a rookie playing very well, maybe two rookies playing very well right now. We'll talk about it on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
You are Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your podcast. That includes YouTube, where Doug Branson of Every Hornets Boxscore.com is angrily biting his fist, just wanting to hurt himself more so he can only feel the pain that is the biting of his fist rather than the Hornets and what kind of pain they're causing for all of the fans staying up to watch just a little bit later of a tip against, the worst team in the NBA, and the Hornets themselves are the second worst team in the NBA. It looked like the two worst teams in the NBA playing on the court here tonight. Lots of missed alley-oops just where the passes weren't even completed. More so on the Houston Rockets side of thing. Yeah, lots of alley-oopsies. I set that one up for you. I lobbed that one up for you to slam it home, that alley-oopsies. And, of course, we'll get to all the bad basketball, but we have another bad injury here, and it happened to LaMelo Ball. So in the second half, LaMelo, because his ankles are not safe from anyone, he lands, while he's up in the air, he lands on the foot of P.J. Washington, just like he landed on the foot of the courtside fan at the Spectrum Center. And when he lands on the foot of P.J. Washington, he's in pain, and he has to get helped not only to the bench, but also he has to get helped off of the floor, going back to the locker room, would sprain his ankle again, out for the rest of the game after that injury. And you have to imagine he's going to miss some serious time, some significant time. Kind of just shrugging my shoulders here, Doug. This is how it's gone for the Hornets. It's how it's gone for LaMelo Ball. And just the latest injury, the third one for LaMelo since preseason, then about, 20 games in, and then now here we are once again with LaMelo suffering that injury.
Yeah, a number of things concern you as regards this particular injury. Number one, how severe the turn looked. I mean, that ankle went almost more than 45 degrees. Like, it did not look like a good turn at all. If that had been his first ankle injury, I would have been super concerned. But this is his third ankle injury now over the course of preseason and the regular season. That can't be good. Two of them were freak accidents, so I don't think this one had anything to do, with the other ones. The other thing that concerns you, Walker, is that Ashley Shahamady wasn't able to really get any information about it. They had him sort of behind the curtain, and she was able to get that he wasn't going to return to the game, but not much more information outside of that. So that's super concerning. And then the final thing is, so he gets injured at the 9:23 mark in the third quarter. But if you rewind the tape at 10:30, and I wrote this down in my Every Hornets Box Score notebook, so make sure to go check those notes when I post them. But at the 10:30 mark in the third quarter, LaMelo drives. He got knocked to the ground. He kind of hit his hip on the stanchion, but he wasn't messing with his hip. He was actually messing with his ankles. And Rozier came over to help him up, and LaMelo said loudly enough for the microphones to pick up, "It's my ankles, bro." And he was messing with actually the right ankle, but I'm pretty sure he said ankles. And he was, if you rewind the tape back even further, he was kind of limping up and down the court. Something happened prior to turning his ankle on the P.J. Washington foot that was already making his ankles a little wonky. And then this happens. So all of that, I think, is super concerning and makes you wonder, it was a month, it was a little over 30 days after the first preseason injury when he returned. And then a little over, I think it was just a couple more days gap in between the second or after the second injury. So it really makes you wonder, this has to be at least 30 days, you would think. We don't know any information, obviously. But it makes you concerned that it could be even longer at this point.
Yeah, I don't know if it's not this bad, but it reminds me a little bit of Steph Curry going through his ankle problems at the very beginning of his career. And of course, Steph Curry would go on to have a resume that is possibly top 10 worthy, especially after this latest championship and NBA Finals MVP. It's hard to imagine that LaMelo ever gets to Steph Curry level, because you're arguing maybe only 9 other players possibly have ever had a better resume than Steph. But we know that that player, that point guard that had ankle injuries early in his career, was able to bounce back stronger than ever. And yet it has not gotten that bad, right? Steph had ankle surgery. He had gone through it quite a bit his first few seasons in the league. And LaMelo has gone through it this season. But you are hoping, as you mentioned, that it does not get any worse than maybe just sitting out the rest of the season and that's it. I mean, I don't know how much time he's going to miss, but Doug, there's just no denying it, right? You said it in the last episode. This is where the rubber meets the road. I said it, I don't know, maybe a week ago when we had Nick Carboni on, that that was pretty much the time that it was over for the Charlotte Hornets. And I think everybody understands that. And that includes Michael Jordan. That includes Mitch Kupchak, any authority figure with that organization. I just don't see any reason, if LaMelo has any pain, 1%, like even normal, it's an 82 game regular season NBA player pain, even that normal stuff. I just don't know if I see any reason for LaMelo to play.
Well, especially if they're sellers at the deadline and they move multiple players. I mean, if we're talking about a fire sale situation, then I think they have every legitimate reason to shelve LaMelo for the rest of the season. It made sense to bring him back the first time because you wanted to see what this team could actually do once he returned. And then he gets injured again and the losses pile up. But even bringing him back the second time, there was still, it was an outside chance of them saving the season. But then that faded away too, because there were other injuries to Hayward, to Martin, and to Kelly Oubre. And so, yeah, I don't know, other than if he's just 100% healthy and there's no issue with the ankle at all, then, maybe you bring him back way late in the season just to let him develop, to let him to continue to work on his game. But I would say that those reasons are outweighed by the concern that you would have that he's doing long-term damage, because everything that's happening in the season, I think, is all rehab focused. It's getting the ankle back to some level of strength that would allow him to continue to play basketball. What concerns you is sort of what the Hornets went through with Kemba Walker. They did that with Kemba Walker multiple times with his knee, rehabbing it to get him back on the floor. And then it was in the off season that they would go and take a look at it and go, well, actually, we need to address this with surgery. So hopefully we're not dealing with that situation with LaMelo Ball, but a lot up in the air at this point. We'll find out more, I'm sure, in the coming days.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure Rod Boone, anybody on the Charlotte Hornets beat, hopefully going to be telling us as much as possible and as quickly as possible. So we'll keep you updated here too, as we find out the information also. We did have some positive notes to at least point out from this game against the Rockets coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
We had some good performances, one from Mark Williams, who was awesome in this game. Bryce McGowens continuing to get some playing time. We'll get to that in just a moment. But first, we got to tell you this episode is brought to you by Built Bar. If you're looking for a delicious treat, but don't want all of the fat and the calories, then you got to try Built Bar. We just got through the holidays. Sometimes you might put on a little holiday weight. That's okay. Built Bar is here for you. And what's great about it is that you don't have to sacrifice taste. You don't even have to sacrifice that delicious, maybe holiday dessert type of taste, because all the Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, all of them, real chocolate, and they're low in calories, they're low in fat, but they're also high in fibers, and they're also high in protein, 17 grams of protein in some of these bars with only 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar. Plus, they taste very good because of the flavors, cookies and cream. You can pick up a four bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puffs. But if you're close to a Sam's Club, then you can run in and grab a 13-bar box with the hit flavors that we just mentioned. So again, either Built.com, you can get your Built Bars, or you can go to a local Walmart or Sam's Club and pick up Built Bars in bulk. More Hornets coming up next. Locked On Hornets.
Is Locked On Hornets.
They're running their rookies to Greensboro. They're driving them to Greensboro and then driving them back the same day to play in an NBA game. I cannot wait until the Hornets load manage.
It's time for more of the Locked On Hornets podcast.
The rose rising from the desert here, Doug. It is Mark Williams, who in this game was an absolute beast in 19 minutes of play. How about 17 points for Mark Williams? 8 of 10 from the field, hit his only free throw attempt off of that crazy and one where you're thinking, okay, the 7'1" guy probably should go up stronger at the basket and maybe, I don't know about dunking on somebody. And he finishes all the way at his hip, but he makes it. In fact, I'm almost glad that he didn't go up stronger because he shoots it from the hip and makes it, goes to the foul line, and then hits the free throw. Not even the points, though, here, Doug, where he had some nice slams. It's the 5 blocks. It is the absolutely sunning Alperen Şengün in this game. And Şengün scored 24 points, but I asked you before we started recording, did all of those points come against Mason Plumlee? Because he couldn't score.
I don't need to watch the film. I'm not Steve Clifford here. I'm not going to watch the film. I'm just going to declare definitively that every single one of Şengün's points was on Mason Plumlee's head.
I don't know why. It's nothing against Şengün. He's a fun player at times. People are still a little bit higher on him than I am, even after the draft. But I just love that Mark destroyed him. Like it gives us something that you win, quote unquote. The Hornets won the big man battle tonight. Mark Williams was swatting all over. It was awesome. I'm just glad that Mark gave us something to pull for. He gave us that little glimmer of hope.
Well, here's the thing. Şengün is goofy looking, right? Oh, yeah. Like he's goofy. Like he's just built proportionally odd. And I used to coach, like sort of kindergarten to like 3rd grade level basketball. And there was always one kid that would kind of run up the floor. Every year I had a kid that would run up the floor with his shoulders pinned back and kind of do this number as he ran up the floor, just kind of like sort of chest poking out, shoulders pinned back. And that's how Şengün runs. He's goofy looking. It's like, it's weird to watch him play basketball, and yet he's highly skilled. But Mark Williams, we saw a guy that is going to legitimately be one of the better shot blockers in the NBA. And wow, what a relief it was to see him do that to Şengün. Shook Şengün. There were multiple opportunities for Şengün to take it up against Mark Williams as we got into the 4th quarter, and Şengün said, nah, I'm good. I don't understand why Mark Williams wasn't out there to end the game. Like when Houston made their big run at the end of this game to kind of get back in, it scared. Terry Rozier said after the game almost gave him a heart attack. Got back into the game with 3 after 3, but they fouled Mason Plumlee. And Mason, to his credit, went 1 for 2, helped him get there.
Hit the second one. Yep.
Right, hit the second one. But why wasn't Mark Williams on the floor? I mean, he was the Şengün stopper. He's a better free throw shooter. I don't get it. But, man, Mark Williams, super impressive. A lot to hope on, a lot to dream on.
Well, and of course, everybody knows we love us some Eric Collins on this podcast. Absolutely love us some Eric Collins.
Friend of the show.
Friend of the show. But boy, was he hyping up Mason Plumlee when he got fouled. He said, wait, Houston doesn't know the scouting report on Mason Plumlee. Maybe last year you should foul him, but this year maybe not so much. Great. He's an improved free throw shooter. It's absolutely who you wanted to foul. And I was thinking, wait, Hornets don't pass it to Mason Plumlee in this scenario because you might just get got. But they didn't. Mason went 1 of 2, hit the second one with his left hand, and they ended up holding on.
Walker, people have criticized me and you and this show for telling the honest truth about Mason Plumlee's play this season. The honest truth is there have been times when he has played really, really well, and whatever faults he has and however that affects the Hornets roster is really a reflection of the organization and not how hard Mason Plumlee has played this year, and he's done a lot of what he's been asked to do, okay? So we've gotten criticized for hyping him up in the past. But I will say this. One day the Hornets will win again. One day they will make the playoffs again. And I think we all have to remember how this organization, and by extension Bally's, tried to ram Mason Plumlee down our throats, whether it's that conversation that Eric was trying to have at the end of the game, or whether it's these godforsaken tweets that go out after every game, after every loss, where he's getting a double-double and it's Mason Plumlee smiling back at me, ironically. It has to be an ironic tweet. But we have to remember how they pushed Mason Plumlee on us at the end of as this season this season really is over. I mean, it's come to an end, and they've tried to force Mason on us. We have to remember that.
Yes, we do. The tweets, and it's a lot more palatable if you're forcing LaMelo on us because he is the star, and it hurts. That's why it hurts that he's injured. But it's also tweets like LaMelo is putting up some special numbers this season, and then comparing that to Damian Lillard, and it's the 24 points per game, it's the 8 assists per game, and then I forget what the other category was, but it was comparing it to Damian Lillard. Nikias Duncan quote tweets that and says, "Yeah, but also," and it gets like 100 likes because people know, and Bally is still just trying to show us, the good side, quote unquote, of what's going on. But you're right. Yeah, they did try to shove Mason Plumlee all upon us and some other stats that maybe aren't nearly as meaningful right now.
They need to be highlighting Bryce McGowens. They need to be highlighting
let's get to Bryce.
McGowens.
For sure. Bryce getting minutes again, 21 minutes in this game, 10 points. How about the putback dunk? That was a nice little Squidward future, fetal position, future crunch, future between those two guys. Bryce McGowens hit Mark Williams with a pass down low, settles for a hook shot, one of the two missed field goals, and then Bryce helps his buddy, Mark Williams, by giving us a putback slam. 10 points for Bryce in this one, 3 assists, 4 rebounds. Yeah, man. It's exactly what we talked about the previous episode. He got some minutes against Boston the last time out. If we're talking about trade packages and they say, "Hey, why don't you throw Bryce McGowens in there?" No, I'd rather not. I don't want to do that deal because I like Bryce McGowens and I want to see where this second round pick that has some flavor. I want to see where he ends up, man. And he was awesome in this game where he got over 20 minutes.
Yeah, and he came through in the clutch. I mean, I think that's the most exciting thing if you're looking towards the future. You want to see these young players get put into these situations where it is, can you make winning plays? And Bryce McGowens showed that he absolutely could make the winning plays. We're talking about middle of the fourth quarter. PJ Washington does a great job coming out of the third quarter break and hitting a couple of shots to get the lead back. After it looked for a while there, after LaMelo's injury, like this game was going to slip away from the Hornets. But PJ gets him back in it, and then McGowens and Mark Williams combine, a little two-man game, and it's McGowens passing. It's his shot-making ability. He hit that 3. I mean, he knew he was going to get contact, and that's the kind of shot that Bryce McGowens is going to hit over and over throughout his NBA career. It was super great to see him hit it in this one. He had that wraparound pass on Şengün, put some stank on it, got it to Mark Williams, who got another dunk. Mark Williams was dunking it all over the place. So, yeah, man, it's just so cool to see McGowens, who, impressed us so much in Summer League, and to see that carry over is such a relief because so many times these guys come out and they're Summer League superstars, and then they can't really put it together. He goes to Greensboro. He relishes that opportunity. He bides his time. He gets that first look and has to sit for a little while. They don't pass him the ball. I'll tell you what, they were passing him the ball in this one, and he got a couple corner 3 opportunities, and he knocked them down. Just super happy for McGowens. And I thought, look, you look at PJ's performance at the beginning of the fourth quarter, that's a big reason why they won. Terry Rozier, especially after LaMelo got injured, stepped up big time. Another showcase performance for Terry Rozier. But I would say, maybe with Terry Rozier, like 1-1A, I'd give it to, McGowens and Mark Williams, game ball situation here. It's great.
Well, and sometimes I roll my eyes at this type of analysis, so feel free to do that to me if you're the listener, if you're Doug Branson. But Bryce McGowens gives a bleep. Like, that guy plays really hard, and I love that from Bryce. I think that was true in Summer League. I would see him when I actually had some chances to go to practice before Summer League hit, and they went out to Las Vegas. And Bryce McGowens was always out there, working after everybody was done, and getting to see Bryce really get his minutes get rewarded. It's really cool. And I think that's something that you liked about Bryce McGowens coming out of college of Nebraska and then being that early second round pick. Yeah. One other thing about Bryce.
He's got the physical tools too. Crazy long arms, huge hops that we saw on that tip dunk. I think he hasn't put every single piece together, but he has all of the pieces to be one of these surprise second rounders that ends up getting a sneak all-star bid at some point.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be great. I'd love that. And a couple threes, by the way, from Bryce McGowen. So 2 of 3 from the 3-point line. That was nice to see as well. All right. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
Give some finishing thoughts in the last segment on this Rockets game. This episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your #1 source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. You can get the latest odds and the trends for every professional and amateur league out there. If you love sports podcasts, you can find those on BetOnline as well. They're always the fastest and the easiest way to get your betting info. You can head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. One more segment to go. Locked On Hornets
is Locked On Hornets.
All right, so we've got Al, or we've got the question how. Like, how did Miles do that? Can you help us end this debate with so much, an unbelievable amount on the line?
Doug, I respect it to the nth degree, but Walker, I'm telling you, it was just, it came, every single person who saw that reacted that way. Some of us just were tighter than others, and I just had to release this from my body.
It's time for more of the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Shout out to Chris Littman, listener Chris Littman, for writing us, listening constantly. We really appreciate that. I thought he did something pretty cool on Twitter, and also asked us about just this trade value list. And we don't have to make our trade list here, Doug, but he did write in some players towards the top. And he has LaMelo #1, obviously. He has Mark Williams, PJ Washington, Jalen McDaniels, Terry Rozier with the contract coming in at #5. Like, and we can, agree, disagree with some of those, whatever. But I do like some of the names up there. I feel like the most tradable players in this game, the guys with the most value that you either might want to hold on to or you want to trade for 100 cents or more on the dollar, those were the guys that showed up in this one. Yeah. I mean, and Mason, maybe not so much defensively, but offensively, scored 17 points, had 9 rebounds, and went 6 of 8 from the field. So Jalen McDaniels didn't hit from 3 in this one, but transition, McDaniels is an absolute beast in this game. Just throwing it to the side, and it's what he does. He's got 100% motor constantly. It's what sees him as the beneficiary to those outlet passes from LaMelo. I mean, Jalen McDaniels, awesome in transition. How about PJ? I want to talk about PJ's block numbers this year. He caught some flack for the blocks not being there at the beginning of the season. And I thought it was odd because the year before he was towards the top, especially at his position, not being a center, right? More power forward, and block percentage, especially with guys that are that short or that play power forward. Well, he's doing it again. Like, he's starting to go up the ranks in block percentage. He had 3 steals, 3 blocks. We know what he provides for this team defensively. I value the hell out of it. And now he's shooting a lot better. We talk about him with this role that he's way more suitable for, like he's playing better in this role. 7 of 11, 2 of 5 from 3. So McDaniels, PJ, Mark, Bryce, Terry coming in with it was those guys that all played well in this game against Houston.
Yeah, I would say a couple of things on the block numbers. One wonders how much not being able to play with a Miles Bridges or a Gordon Hayward for a vast majority of this season will affect that, because it shifts his responsibilities defensively, and also not playing with a legitimate shot blocker like somebody or somebody that can kind of clog things up in the middle, because PJ's really good at that, coming out of nowhere help side block. So those are much easier when you're playing with someone like Mark Williams. Like, a couple of those blocks that he had was with Mark Williams on the floor, clogging things up and making things difficult. I'm not gonna. Houston was terrible, and they were slow and they were predictable. And so, I think a ton of these block shots are situations where, like, the Hornets were just like, oh, you're telegraphing this. I know exactly what you're going to do. I'm going to block this shot, and less a spectacular kind of block. So I don't want to judge much on this game, but yeah, he had a good game. Mark had a ton of block shots. The one thing I like about Jalen, you mentioned him in transition, he's so great at the first dribble after he makes the steal. That first dribble, he throws it way up ahead and then sprints full speed to the basketball once he throws it up ahead, and the transition defense is just left playing catch up. It's such a great move by him, and he can get away with it because he's so long that he can catch up to the ball before anybody else can. What can you say at this point? Jalen McDaniels, like you understand now why he is valuable to other teams.
Yeah, and just more on the PJ thing, I think he's 14th in the league right now this season when it comes to block percentage, and the guys that are ahead of him, it's Nick Claxton, who could win Defensive Player of the Year. It's Brooke Lopez, Joel Embiid, Zubats, Christian Wood, Porzingis, Rudy Gobert, Steven Adams, right? Like, you don't get to somebody around his size and position until you get to John Collins, and PJ Washington is 14th in the league. He's a good shot blocker. He's a good defender. He's going to guard people on the perimeter, and you get that from Jalen. And you just went through all of the reasons as to why you might like a Jalen McDaniels. If you want to look at the schedule going forward here, this is a little road trip that the Hornets are going to be on right now. So not only do you play the Rockets, you get that win 122-117. You have 3 other road games. Atlanta on Saturday, so actually have a couple days rest. Steve Clifford talked about that after the last Boston loss and said that's going to be valuable to them because it's been so long since they've had 2 days off before they get to play that third game. So it's usually just 1 day off, 1 day on. So not the case here. And then after Saturday, you have the road game against Utah, Monday, January 23rd, and then you play the second night of a back-to-back. You got to be in Utah and then hit the flight, go to Phoenix Tuesday, January 24th. Utah playing a lot better. Even with Phoenix not being in the play-in right now, it's going to be tough, right? The Hornets are towards the bottom of the standings, towards the bottom of the league, and it's going to be tough to come by some of these victories. What do you make of this road trip?
Well, the 2 days is going to be especially helpful because now you have to reorganize everything if LaMelo is going to miss extended time. And we've been assuming that's the case. They could come out tomorrow and say, well, yeah, it looked bad, but actually he's fine. So, we have to really, make sure to mention that. But if he is out extended time, those couple of extra days gives them a chance to rethink how they're doing everything and shuffle the rotation and make sure that everybody's prepared for that. And then Utah is going to be interesting. Walker Kessler, I liked him in this last draft. Nobody else seemed to like him. I liked him, and he's playing really well. So it'll be interesting to see him go up against Mark Williams for a few possessions. Hopefully we don't see Nick Richards anytime soon. Let's let Mark continue to cook. You have to reward young players when they're playing as hard and playing as well as Mark is right now. So Nick Richards, there are plenty of games left to get Nick Richards some more run, some more burn as we head into the offseason, but now's not the time. Let's keep running on the Mark train. The other thing that I'll say is I'm just looking forward to playing like legitimate NBA teams because Houston, look, they're on their path right now, but they are not a legitimate NBA team. And the way they play, just the chaos that they played with and the lack of discipline that they played with and how much that confused the Hornets in the first half. Because the Hornets are a bad basketball team. I'm not saying the Hornets are a good basketball team, but the Hornets are a bad basketball team, okay? That's their level. And then Houston is like way down. And they play with such chaos that it confuses even bad teams. And it reminds me of playing, Walker, these people on NBA 2K that have no idea how to play the game of basketball. And they're hitting you with all the cheesy stuff. They're trying to steal every possession. They're bringing help from all kinds of crazy places. And when you play those players, it throws you off at the beginning of the game because you're trying to play a normal game and they're playing chaos. And you will start to lose to those teams because it completely takes you out of your rhythm because you're expecting them to do one thing and they do a completely different thing. And so you have to settle down. And this is what the Hornets, I thought, did really well in the second half is they settled down and said, okay, let's play our game. Let's not let them, their chaos cause us to play chaotically because that's what happened in the second quarter. The Hornets finally settled down in that second half and stopped letting Houston's chaos affect them. And, I'm just glad they're going to play Atlanta and Utah and some of these teams that just play an NBA brand of basketball that isn't completely alien because you will eventually beat those teams, but it scares you in the first half because you have no idea where anybody's going to be.
Oh, that second quarter was god awful that the Hornets played. So yes, it was nice to see them settle down in the second half. But eventually you get the win. You suffer a bigger loss with LaMelo Ball going down with that ankle sprain. We'll see when LaMelo comes back. So,
will the NBA gods reward us, Walker? Will they? They've tortured us. We have to remain faithful. We have to remain faithful and understand that this thing has to turn around. It's not going to turn around in the win column anytime soon this season. But look, they're trying so hard. I mean, you look at Terry after that game when he was doing his interview with Ashley Shahadi. The guy is just like, he's just leaving it all out on the floor. Blood, sweat, and tears. Bryce McGowens,
Mark Williams. As hell.
But yeah, he's tired as hell. PJ Washington. We're talking about guys that are leaving it out on the floor. They are not. They're playing undisciplined. Yes. They're playing frustrated. Yes. They're not playing well offensively. They have defensive issues everywhere, but they're trying so hard, and there's so many injuries that I feel like the basketball gods have to reward us, and that's why I will be spending the next few weeks spamming tankathon.com.
It's about that time. It's earlier than usual. Yes, even for Hornet standards, very, very early, but it might be that time to hit the
stretching out my clicking fingers.
There you go. Thanks for making Locked On Hornets your first listen today. Make your second listen game to game NBA. Every moment, every top performance, every result. Locked On Game to Game covers every game from across the NBA with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. Follow Game to Game on Locked On NBA, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast. Have a great rest of your day. We'll be back with you tomorrow.
Click, 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 click.